If you were the star quarterback at Alabama and you knew the archery team was getting the same amount of money as you, it's not fair. It's not equitable, and these players would have a problem with that. You know, and even if you paid a minimum wage, there's not going to be. Even if I allow you to, you should capitalize on your likeness. If you're going to sell jerseys, even if my name's not on the back of it, like Johnny Manziel at Texas A&M, you're going to sell number 2 jerseys. He deserves a cut when he leaves school. But I can't have you show up at a car dealership here because then it gets sketchy, folks. Because there's all of a sudden, if I show up at a car dealership and I play at this university, all I have to do is say, and you know what you're going to make at that dealership? We're going to pay $100,000 because we want you to come to this school. It's not like you get an appearance fee where they're going to give you $2,500 to sign autographs. There'll be money. There'll be more money. It'll be money under the table. Yes, Eden.
So when people always talk about how, like, the players are getting paid, you know, they get a full ride, they get a free college education, I always think of people, like you said, the archery team, you know, or volleyball, or sports like that. Like, yeah, I got to go to school for free because I played the sport. But when you're playing a sport that makes $11 billion a year for the school, that's a completely different thing. It should be easy to make a dividing line where the water polo team isn't making the same as the basketball team.
The revenue producing sports, and then how do you divvy that up? And there's no way to do it in an equitable fashion. It's just not. And even if you give walking around money, they used to give you laundry money, you know, but I think it's always going to be there. And they keep making more money with, you know, the CBS TNT contract, the NCAA. Where does that money go? It doesn't go to investigations. That's for sure. I mean, salaries, Seton?
But don't, you know, in the collective bargaining agreements for other leagues and sports, they have like a revenue share thing where the players get a certain amount and the teams get a certain amount. Why can't you do that with the school and the players?
For each sport, the amount of money that's made, but then how do I decide? So everybody gets the same? That's different in the NFL.
Well, no. Why should everybody get the same?
But how do I decide who gets more?
Well, because
based on their revenue?
Well, based on revenue and based on, I mean, there's a clear difference between the starting wide receiver and the holder.
But then how do I differentiate between the running back and the, you know, safety or defensive back?
The same way that you do with every other contract, where in the NFL, safety makes X amount of money and a running back makes X amount of money.
Yes, Paulie.
The compass is back. Jay Billis was listening, wants to talk to you again.
Oh, hey, Jay.
Dan, how you doing?
Good, Jay. It's been a long time.
I was so interested in your discussion about how to do this and make it equitable. And equitable, if you want to say what's fair, fair is free market. So the same way you deal with coaches, or, you know, we always talk about how complicated this would be, as if these universities don't each have 30,000 employees and they don't pay the landscaper the same as they pay the president. They just put a college football playoff together in no time to make $1 billion a year just off the college football playoff. And they didn't say, how are we going to do this? Are we going to pay the officials the same as we pay the coaches? Are we going to pay? They know exactly whom to recruit. They know exactly whom to put in the game. They know exactly who to pay. And if it's a free market thing where everybody is able to bargain for their fair market value in this enterprise, then the natural and probable consequence of that is people are going to sign contracts, and it's going to be really orderly. And, you know, it's funny that this has nothing to do with your status as a student. The NCAA can still say you have to be a student in good standing, and it's actually going to make things, if we did it this way where it's free market, it would actually make the academic side easier to deal with, because players are going to have their compensation tied to their status as a full-time student in good standing. Because every other student, as you know, Dan, every other student there at any school is allowed to go to school, be a student, and get their fair market value in whatever endeavor they choose, as long as they're not an athlete. So the idea that an athlete is a student just like any other student has always been a lie, because they're not allowed, they're not afforded the same access to the marketplace as every other student. And other students get scholarships too. But they can work for their universities, and they can take money from somebody. They can take whatever they like As long as they declare it on their taxes, they're in great shape, and nobody says, "Well, your paper is going to have to be graded differently, you dirty professional."
But Jay, how do
that.
I decide how much you're worth at each university?
The same way you do with the rest of your 30,000 employees.
But let's say T. Boone Pickens is a billionaire, and he says, "I want to pay the star basketball player $5 million."
Go ahead.
So
coaches, but he doesn't. He doesn't.
But I'm saying if we had this free marketplace, and all of a sudden there's no cap, and you want to get T. Boone Pickens wants to spend $50 million a year on the starting five at Oklahoma State, and he's going to spend that money, to be above board. You're going to have to sign a contract there. You don't have any problem with that, of just the amount of money you want to spend. That it's not finite.
It's not finite in any other area. Yeah, I'd be absolutely fine with that because there are roster limits. So it's not like T. Boone Pickens can sign 150 basketball players. There are only going to be 13 players that can be signed. And it's a very simple deal, Dan. I mean, the free market works pretty well for everybody else in America. Mm-hmm. And the idea it wouldn't work for college athletes is absurd. And no reasonable economist would agree with that. Every reasonable economist agrees with this side, and that is it would be orderly. It is not, the idea is somehow that it's way too complicated, that we can figure out how to pay everyone else in this entire process, in this entire multi-billion-dollar industry. We know what everyone else is worth, but we can't figure out what these athletes are worth. But we know exactly who to recruit, and we know exactly who to put in the game when we want to win. Like they're not sitting there saying, well, it's really not fair that the best players play more minutes than the bad players. Like, that's not fair. What are we going to do? It's absurd to even suggest that. And they know who to put on the cover of their magazines, too, and all their mailings, and they know who to put out in the media. It is not that difficult. And we don't make that same call. Like at all these universities, we're going to say, wait a minute, we can't pay the head coach more than we pay the trainer. That's not fair. That's not right. The trainer works really hard. And you never hear the college commissioners who are making these ridiculous economic arguments. Their secretaries don't make as much as they do. How do we know that we should pay the commissioners more than their secretaries? That doesn't, that's not equitable. The whole system will fall apart. It doesn't make any sense.
For more Dan Patrick Show, tune to Audience Channel 239 on DirecTV or download the Dan Patrick Show app.